Hello, everyone. My name is Taryn Southern, and I'm so thrilled to be here, in no small part because Vimeo was actually one of the first platforms to fund my first original film back in 2014. Now, for those of you who don't know me, my background is pretty eclectic. I have been a content creator, an artist, a storyteller, and a digital strategist for the past 15 or so years. But the thing that's really defined a lot of my work is the use of innovative technologies to innovate and push boundaries. And so today, I am thrilled to be here to share practical tips for how you can use AI to transform your creative process and your storytelling. Now, my experiments with technology began about 15 years ago. It was July of 2007 when I uploaded my very first video to YouTube. And at the time, of course, digital video was really the wild, wild west. It was a place for cat videos and pranks, really not a place for sophisticated content. And there was a whole group of us that started uploading videos. We had absolutely no money. We had no fancy equipment. But for creative people with a DIY attitude, the platform offered one simple promise. And that was, it was a place where you could tell any story you wanted with the world, zero gatekeepers. So, of course, thousands of young creators joined, all with this one thing in common. And in traditional Hollywood, you had this tradition of having 12, 15, 20 people all make a single piece of content. But this was the first time in history where we saw content creators learning absolutely everything from lighting to makeup, scripting, producing, editing, marketing, you name it, all of that in order to create a piece of content. And to be good enough for each of those areas, we were all forced to experiment and play with new tools, such as camera rigs and lights and editing softwares, and of course, data. So data told us a lot about the kinds of stories that worked and the kinds of stories that didn't. We learned that digital audiences were not the same as television audiences. They wanted bite-sized ideas. They wanted authenticity. They wanted fast cuts, fast speaking, sort of an element of real-time discovery in the videos. And so we saw storytelling formats evolve as a result of this data. Stuff like vlogs or challenge videos, unboxing videos became really popular. So practically overnight, the long-held rules of traditional storytelling were pretty much dismantled by a group of unconventional thinkers who didn't quite fit the Hollywood mold. So it should really come as no surprise that many of the first people to actually dive into the latest and greatest tools are content creators, which brings me to artificial intelligence. So it was 2016 when I was looking for my next big creative jolt, something to serve as a source of creative inspiration. And in the years before that, I'd noticed that AI had been making some headlines. In 2015, AlphaGo had just beat a human in chess. That was quite a big deal. The first poem quietly passed the Turing test. We also saw the very first outputs from a modern text-to-image model. So these are visual blobs done by a line draw. And AI in Belgium was used to predict hit songs. And this AI from Facebook and Rutgers created some very blobby visual art. All of this happened before 2016. Then here I am searching for my next big tool, my next source of inspiration, and I see this headline in the New York Times. It wrote, "From jingles to pop hits, AI is music to some ears." And I was like, what? AI can make music? At this point, it was pretty much just theoretical for me that this was possible. So I was definitely intrigued. And I began experimenting. So in 2017, I released my very first musical collaboration with AI. It was a song called Break Free. And over the months that followed, this is what transpired.
You are something very unique. You are a singer-songwriter who's working with AI to make music.
I sometimes liken my storytelling process to scientist in residence in the sense that I actively experiment with the technology that I'm telling a story about. It became a really collaborative process with some of these companies and one that had a lot of unexpected results.
She just released what's said to be the first album co-written and co-produced by artificial intelligence.
Make the album, Taryn used several different types of AI software.
I want to talk about where it composes music.
In this instance, I see AI as a collaborative tool. Working with AI has changed my creative process, and it will absolutely transform the music industry in really exciting ways.
So that was the beginning of my AI experimentation. And at the time, it really felt as though I was playing with magic. You know, it was this wide open adventure into the great unknown. There were no rules, no how-to manuals, just this process of discovery and trial and error. And since that time, I became hooked with my AI experiments. I have completed dozens of them since 2016, creating photorealistic headshots for my LinkedIn, cinematic images, art for my bedroom, animations. I've restored and animated my old family photographs. I've transformed and transmuted my voice. In 2020, at the height of the pandemic, I even made a video clone of myself. Here's a little clip.
I'm actually not a person at all, at least not a real person anyway. I am a creation of artificial intelligence.
It was a lot of fun. And by 2023, it seemed that the rest of the world had also caught on to the magic of AI. We saw groundbreaking achievements finally hitting headlines around the world. AI defeating doctors in tumor diagnosis, AI outperforming expert human coders, AI even creating a Drake song that's just, quite frankly, better than most other Drake songs. So why is all of this such a big deal for creativity? Well, I believe it's because we used to have had about 20 years between major innovations. And then here comes AI happening seemingly overnight. And not only is it progressing at this rapid pace, but this one tool can loosely approximate the neural networks and talents of the human brain. So what happens when that tool can create practically anything? In the time it takes for me to even finish the sentence, AI can create a 4K photograph, craft a pitch deck, prepare tax returns, produce pop songs. We knew the robots would eventually come for our jobs. But how do we feel about it encroaching on the last bastion of humanity, our creativity? Is creativity dead? If you've ever feared that the rapid evolution of AI will eclipse your unique talents, if you've ever felt overwhelmed with the speed of technological advancements, do not worry, you are not alone. Fortunately, we have a very long history of new tools forcibly evolving human creativity and thus our storytelling. Every time new tools come to market, from the printing press, which enabled humans to write books, to the film camera, which enabled us to make movies, there's always been an outcry from traditional creative communities. But then society evolves and we end up creating all new creative fields that didn't exist before, just like the YouTuber, just like the content creator. So the only thing that I think we need to fear at this moment is complacency. If we don't learn how to work with the tools, if we don't learn how to build and synthesize our own ideas with them, then AI could be a serious threat. But if we want to push creative boundaries, if we're willing to learn and adapt quickly and iterate, I do believe we will thrive. There's this famous line I love by Steve Jobs, which he famously stole from Faulkner. He said, "Good artists copy, great artists steal." So why did he say this? Well, one important way that artists develop their style and poetics and their distinct expressive language is by actually diving deeply into the work that inspires them, kind of like ancient apprentices did, and then treating those works as inspirational source points. When you analyze these works, when you play with the elements, you take it all apart, you put it back together, that's how artists develop their muscle. And so now here you are in this very interesting position where AI can give you an infinite number of inspiration points, infinite number of resources and tools. So it's really about what will you do with all of those tools? I think with AI, you can create absolutely anything you can imagine. So with that all said, let's get started in applying AI toward our creative process. So first, let's just start by breaking down the elements of creativity, because I think it's important to think about AI as something that helps us with each of these components according to your preferences. So we know from numerous studies that creativity is really a combination of four different things: of exposures, what we've been taught or educated or exposed to; process, this is the operations, how we actually get from point A to point B, how we create something from start to finish. This tends to be where we get stuff done. And also, for a lot of artists, a point of great friction. A third component of creativity is our ability to synthesize, which is taking an insight from one domain and applying it to another domain. A really great creative test for how good you are at synthesizing information is the paperclip test. How many different applications can you come up with for a paperclip? This shows a type of synthesis or divergent thinking. And the fourth component of creativity, which is sort of that elusive, magical moment that we all just crave as creatives, is illumination. It's the unexpected aha moment that happens in the shower when you're least expecting it. So obviously, each of you is going to have your own relationship to these 4 items, and you'll know what percentage you currently allocate toward your creative output. So I want to ask you, what areas do you often feel stuck, or which areas do you feel where you could often use some additional help? Because these are the areas where you really want to focus your efforts with AI. So up until AI came around, we obviously would fill in the holes of our own creative expertise by collaborating with real life people, much like the ones who are listed here. But if you are a DIY content creator, you maybe got used to trying to do all of these things on your own, and at the risk of maybe creating a lot less creative content. So now with AI, you have access to all of these skill sets and perspectives and tools that the same people on this list have. But now you get to collaborate with them on your own time, no budget required. So I want you to think of AI as your full stack creative team. You are the director. So to be a great director, you need to have clarity and specificity in your direction, but you also need to have meta awareness. So there's going to be parts of your idea that you want to hold really tightly, and you also will have parts of your ideas that are open to change based on creative feedback from your AI teammates. You'll be able to filter through the good ideas and the bad ideas, allowing for novel ideas to seep in, and to also separate and improve upon each component part of your project before assembling it all back together. And that's really what an incredible director does. Now, there is a very simple formula that you will use over and over and over again in order to organize this process that you will undergo as a director. I call it the AAA AI formula. And you can write this down because you will use this formula for every creative project you do with AI. This formula ensures that your creativity, which consists of your voice, your goals, your vision, your expertise, all of that acts as a foundation for your storytelling, while also ensuring that the goals of your audience and the expertise of your AI team members are properly incorporated into the iterative process of creativity. So let's dive in and break down each of these formula components. First, your avatar. So this is a digital representation of your creative voice. And in order to work effectively with AI, you need to train it on the various components. So the components that I use to train my avatar on are the following: my project goals. Am I trying to sell a product? Am I trying to build a brand? Am I writing a musical? Then my project traits. Is the final product a book? How long is the book going to be? Then I look at my constraints. What are my resources, time, budget, the things that I just need to keep in mind as I embark on this project? Finally, you've got your domain expertise. How is that best represented here? And your tone, in other words, your creative voice. And we're going to be training the AI on your actual creative work so that you can have a very specific tone that applies only to you. Next, as part of your AAA AI formula, is your audience. So what are the goals and the traits of your audience? How will your creative project help them accomplish these goals? Do they have expertise in the same domain that you are in? And most importantly, how do they make decisions? Because studies show that there are really only 4 ways people make decisions: logic, emotion, intuition, and credibility. So what are you prioritizing in creating this piece of content? And lastly, ask yourself the question: why is the audience taking time out of their busy day to listen to you? You're going to write all of this down because in a minute, you'll be injecting it all into ChatGPT or any other AI system in order to train it with this formula. Okay, finally, we get to my favorite part. This is your AI team. Who do you need on your team to elevate your creative vision? Do you need a designer, an editor, a cinematographer, a marketer? You'll decide based on the project needs who you want your team to be, write their perspectives, their level of expertise. And then once you've finished this exercise, you can actually start to assign tools that you need to represent each of these team members. So this is my handy generative AI tool map. Kind of shows the plethora of AI tools that are currently on the market. Clearly, there are hundreds more, from text to images, video to transcription. I have my personal favorites, but of course, you're going to find your own just by experimenting. And once you have your AI team members, you can actually select the tools that you feel best represent their skill sets. And I'll show you exactly how all of this works by playing it out with a creative experiment. All right, so here's our creative experiment. Last month, it was announced that Fire Festival 2, everyone's favorite music festival, is happening again. And so in this creative experiment, you are tasked with creating a satirical promotional video to sell tickets. You have only 2 hours to do this, and you must use AI tools for every step in the process. All right, so now we're going to jump back into our AI formula. We're starting in pre-production. So this is training the AI. And you remember our formula. We're going to start with training our avatar. So remember, this is to ensure that your creative genius is reflected in this project, your project goals, your project traits, your constraints, and then of course, your tone and your domain expertise. So let's just start with the first 3. In terms of goals, we want to make a satirical viral video that drives ticket sales to Firefest 2. In terms of traits, we want the project to be under 1 minute in length, and we want it to follow a structure with setting, conflict, climax, and resolution. In terms of constraints, well, we have no budget, we have no actors, we have only 2 hours to complete the task, and we also need the video to be made up entirely of images and or video that we can create with AI. So once we have all of that, we're going to actually just input that into a new chat under Chat GPT. And I use GPT-4 because of all the plugins that are available. And so I highly recommend it for anyone who's planning to up-level their AI writing. And we're going to stay inside of this specific chat for the duration of the project so that GPT remembers everything that we've trained it on. Okay, now we are moving into training GPT on our tone. And this is probably the most important piece of training your avatar. It really is what makes or breaks the difference between creating something generic and an end result that is unique and has clarity and vision. So if we want GPT to reflect the tone of work we have already created, we can do that by organizing our writing samples in a process I call stacking. And then you train GPT by uploading that material and asking it to define the tone of voice that it reads inside the material. So as you'll see here, I placed the word tone in brackets, so that way GPT knows in future chats, this is the material I am referencing. Now here's the list it came up with based on material that I fed the chat. It said it was mockingly hyperbolic, visually and verbally comedic, urgently compelling, social media centric, ironically self-aware, and aspirationally extravagant. So it sounds pretty good for a Fire Festival 2 video, I might say. So I think we can keep going, maybe even try to refine this tone even further by uploading more work. And if we do that, we can ask GPT to actually synthesize the 2 tones in one. And you can keep repeating this process until you get really, really happy with the tone that GPT is taking on to represent you. Now we move on to the final step of our avatar training, and this is making sure that GPT is aware of our domain expertise. So domain expertise is typically the information, the research, the studies that inform your work. So in the case of Fire Festival, we've probably all watched the documentaries or read the news stories, but we don't know what GPT has seen. So we're going to use the GPT browser extension plugin and ask GPT to incorporate information from the following prominent Fire Festival articles. And this enables us to ensure that the accuracy of content in the promotional video is there. But that's not all. We can take it a step further. Let's say we want to make sure that the script that we write incorporates a theory of comedy that we studied in comedy class, such as this one. It's called benign violation theory. Now, this theory was developed by a professor at the University of Colorado in Boulder, and he sought to understand the mechanics of humor. So the theory basically states that hilarity is created when a scenario essentially violates a moral or social norm while also being benign or reconcilable at the same time. So studies show that this type of humor helps increase message comprehension, that it can create positive feelings towards a brand, it increases product purchase intent. So depending on the goals of the video, in which case ours is to sell tickets, we want to ensure that this research is used by GPT to inform our content. Okay, we have trained GPT on our avatar. It is now time to train GPT on our audience. So what are their traits? What are their goals? Do they have domain expertise? How do they make decisions? What is their jobs to be done theory of innovation? In other words, how is this piece of content going to help this audience accomplish their goals and objectives? So in the case of our Firefest video, we're looking at an audience of maybe 18 to 35-year-old social media savvy influencers with high discretionary income. I'm just making a rough approximation that their goals are probably to party, maybe to meet attractive people, maybe to increase their follower counts. Perhaps they don't have domain expertise because they don't really care if the travel and accommodations are bad. Maybe they make decisions on emotion, not logic or intuition. We know that when it comes to their jobs to be done question, Fire Festival 2 will be the best story of their lives. It will increase their social status, and that is why they want to attend. So we take all of this, we input it into GPT so that GPT knows our audience. Now we can move on to the final area. It is time to assemble and train our AI team. These are different areas of expertise you need to elevate your project. So for our Fire Festival experiment, we need a scriptwriter, a cinematographer, a video editor, and a social media marketer. And for each of these, we're going to assign the different tools. So these are our different team members and their tools that we will be using. And now we get into writing. So here's where we give GPT a prompt based on everything we've already trained it to learn. So you have to make sure that the prompt provides clarity, context, perspective, and a question. So here in my prompt, we have, you are a hilarious and experienced viral video writer. Now keeping in mind our stated goals, our tone, our traits, our constraints, and our audience, can you write our first video draft? And that's really how we get started. So there is the script that GPT provided to me. You can ask GPT to give you feedback. You can provide GPT with feedback as well. And it's great. It even breaks the script down by time code. So once you've gone back and forth with GPT and you have a finished script, you can gut check your work to ensure it meets your goals and that of your audience. You can also ask GPT to identify if there are any biases or critical missing pieces of information that you should be aware of. And finally, it's time to move on to production. Now, I'm not a cinematographer. I have very little skills here. So of course, I started by asking GPT about specific lenses that I can use to inform the starting images in my work. I can take that information over to Midjourney, insert it into my prompts there. I can then take the resulting photographs that I like. The famous grilled cheese sandwich has now been updated, of course. And I'm pulling that over to Runway, which is an incredible AI app for adding camera moves, video. And there's my slow slider pushing in on a pretty gross looking grilled cheese sandwich. I'll do the same for multiple images, as many as I need. And finally, we're ready to put it all together. And we don't have a lot of time because remember, we only had a 2-hour experiment. So I decided to use Vimeo's video editor. It's a very easy interface. It allows you to search for stock images for anything that you didn't have time to create in Midjourney and Runway. And here is the final finished product. Because history should repeat itself. That was my favorite line from GPT. So look, Fire Festival video or not, it was nothing groundbreaking to make that, but it's something that to be done in under 2 hours was absolutely impossible to do 10 years ago. So now imagine spending that time to create a dream project like an animated film or a Broadway musical or a comic book and applying these tools to create absolutely anything that you can imagine. This is the first time in history where the cost of ideas has never been cheaper, the barriers to entry have never been lower, and no professional expertise is required to make anything. And so what that means is the playing field has just leveled. So what's next? I think in the next 5 years, AI will enable us to do a lot of really amazing things. We'll be able to listen to music tailored to our cognitive and emotional needs. Storylines will shift for our intended physiological states. Art will change in real time to optimize our brain waves. So much will be happening, and it will be combined in real time with our physiological signals. But let's just start here. One experiment, 1 to 2 hours each week, that will give you a leg up in the creative industry. Whether it's creating a new logo, a marketing video, rewriting a blog post, whatever it is, just set a goal because that's what makes it less overwhelming. And let's face it, AI is not a silver bullet for creativity. The impact of this tech means we will see a lot of content noise, a lot of information, a lot of misinformation and copyright issues. But on the other hand, AI also will allow us to accomplish incredible feats of the human imagination and empower new ways of being and thinking across the human experience and across our storytelling. It's really just up to us as storytellers to determine what we want to use it for. So in closing, the future is weird, the future is scary, the future is wildly exciting. I wish you all good luck with your AI adventures.